This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org. Welcome to another edition of Maui Causes. Hi, I'm Sam Small. Eternal thanks for Akaku in giving us the use of their studio and allowing us to bring to you issues and ideas in Maui County that you're not likely to hear from other places. We have an open door here to people who have solutions because, man, there's so many issues here in Maui County. Because of our small island nature, people and citizens and communities around the world have all kinds of different problems. There's all kinds of issues. And because of our small size, it seems that we have them all. Anything that could go wrong, anything that could be a problem in a society is a problem here in this society. And our system has so long been structured, the structure of our business, the structure of our government, the structure of control is a result of the plantation system. What we have here in Hawaii is a result of the plantation system. We are living in an oppressed society. The Hawaiian culture is an oppressed society. And anybody moving here, if you think that you're just moving to another state in the United States, well, man, stick around, because you will learn that that is not true. Hawaii is unique, very unique. And there are issues here because of our small size that we as citizens can have an impact over. And that's an extraordinary thing. Your impact as an educated voter makes a huge difference. Your impact participating, going to county council sessions and giving testimony is an extraordinarily powerful tool for change. And we can have change. We keep moving the bar. And we invite you to participate, educate yourself, and get involved. Come and testify. Go to MauiCauses.org or look for us on Facebook. We have a lot of different issues that we track. We try and bring you important events ahead of time, and you can support the process by making a generous donation to Maui Causes so that we can continue to help educate the community and bring forth that modern municipality that Maui County can be. A modern municipality with appropriate levels of transparency and something that we've never, ever, ever, ever had here before: accountability. We have an opportunity to establish real accountability, and that is tremendously important. So that we don't always, it's not always about the problem. Certainly we need to know about the problem, but we try and bring you some of the solutions as well. And we have in our community rich resources of people who have expertise and experience to be able to solve some of our problems. And one of our biggest problems here in Maui County and all of Hawaii is water. Fresh water, who has control of it, who has access to it, and how do we, in a more fairly distribute the water resources that we have, protect what we have, enhance what we have outside of the plantation system. Let's wipe out the plantation system and go back to a place where the water resources that we have are appropriately distributed and including the people, not just the business interests. So part of the solution of that is brought to us today by our guest, Bridget Buynak.
Buynak, yeah.
Bridget, you are an attorney?
I'm a water attorney since 2002.
What a fabulous thing to have here in Maui County. It's just what we needed. Maui delivers. Maui gives you what you need. And here we have, how long have you been living on Maui?
I've been here about a year and a half, but about 10 years ago I lived here also.
So
this is my second stage.
You're getting, your fingers and your feet wet.
Yes.
To see, and understand what some of our local issues are and what resources and change we can bring to our system to make it more equitable and balanced.
Yes, that sounds really wonderful.
Doesn't it, though? Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for, for your willingness.
Yes.
To come forward.
And I'm very happy to be here. I've wanted to come and speak with you for a little while now, so
Great.
We made it happen.
Good. Yeah,
That's great.
Happy to have you here, and you've put together something of a presentation.
Yeah, I have a little PowerPoint to help us stay on track.
Great.
I wanted to talk about sustainable development because we have forgotten it. It seems to be on the back burner quite a bit. And what does that exactly mean? What does sustainable development mean? Because those two words can actually contradict each other.
Sometimes it seems that way.
Sustainable and then development, they have separate agendas often. So to give a little bit of background, I graduated from the University of New Mexico School of Law in 2002.
Yay.
Yeah, and it's a very arid state. So I was thrusted into dealing with water issues, and I had excellent professors. And right upon graduating, I worked for the Office of the State Engineer, which deals with all the water issues in this very, very arid state. There's not a drop of water available. And
no excess, that's for sure.
There's no excess, there's adjudications, and I was a special assistant attorney general for the state of New Mexico in the Taos adjudication. So that definitely had me dealing with farmers and acequias. I've worked in the three branches of government, which is a little unusual for an attorney. So I've worked in the judicial, I've worked in the executive, and then I've worked in the legislature.
Great.
And I was an analyst for the Senate Judiciary Committee, and any water law that came in front of the committee, I would analyze. So I know about that quite a bit. And then and I've also had my own private practice where I've worked with Water User Association and then acequia members who are trying to get water from like water user groups. And then before moving back to Maui, I was studying again. I went back to school and got a LLM in International Water Law.
Wow.
So I've looked at other water systems around the world. And my dissertation focused on the Tigris-Euphrates River Basin and really looked at sustainable development for that area and how to make things better.
And that also includes, I'm sure, indigenous rights in various different venues, in various different places.
And so when they have big dams upstream, like in Turkey, it really affects the wetlands down below and those indigenous people down below.
And what their rights are and what the government's responsibility is to those people.
Yeah, they had to migrate in order to live because all the water was taken away, basically.
Right.
So moving along.
So how does that apply to Hawaii, and how does that apply to Maui? How do you see? What do you see as our water issues here?
Often when there's a scarcity of water, it really means that there's a lack of water management. There needs to be better water management. When I've been on Maui and there's torrential rain coming down.
Seemingly there's plenty of water, that's right.
There's enough water on Maui, to be honest.
Right.
This is a water management problem,
right.
in my humble opinion. I'm surprised that development has occurred without adequate water supplies and without adequate wastewater being provided for treatment.
Right.
Just putting it in the ground and not knowing where it's going to go.
No, using injection wells is an absurd strategy and obviously illegal because the Maui County has been sued by the federal government.
It's a huge issue.
To stop
but
it.
Even beyond that, I've been surprised how upcountry the homes just put the wastewater into the ground.
Right.
And it's just like no thought to how it's going to affect downstream.
Well, and there's issues over septic tanks and making transitions into that.
It's very expensive.
Right.
And who's going to pay?
Right.
That's part of it. And I just wanted, going back to my experiences, I've done conferences in Mexico, Ireland, Scotland, and Sweden, and I've done the UNITAR water diplomacy program with the United Nations, and I also volunteered at Nyumbani, which is an orphanage in Kenya, where all the children are HIV positive.
Oh my.
And I went to Kibera, which is the slum outside of Kenya, and I saw a river running black, which I had never seen before.
Oh my.
And water is a big issue there.
Right.
So it's not just Maui that's having water issues.
Sure.
It's around the globe.
Right, and
Big,
it's complicated
big time.
everywhere you go.
And I do think that there needs to be more transparency as to what other folks are doing so that we can learn from each other. Maui can obviously give guidance to other places, but also there needs to be a receptivity to what's going on around. There was a definition of sustainable development, which I think is important to just communicate. So I'm going to read it.
Okay.
Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And there's two key concepts in there. One is of people who are considered to be more poor, and whether they can take care of themselves with the resources available.
Or whether the society needs to make accommodations for them.
And then there's ideas of, there's a limitation through technology and social organization on the environment's ability to meet our needs. There's only so much that the earth can give. And here is a picture of Gro Harlem Brundtland, who was the Prime Minister of Norway, and she's a tough cookie.
One of your heroes?
I don't know. I just I always think what was going through her mind when she was doing this. You know, was it a political maneuver, or was it, actually caring?
What did she do?
She was actually caring. She's the one who put together a report really pushing forward sustainable development. And
defining the terms of what is sustainable development. Just as you say, they can be mutually exclusive. Development is not necessarily sustainable. Sustainability does include a certain amount of development. Some people say, oh, if you're not full-fledged, build it out 100%, suddenly you're anti-development. And that's just not true. There is this balancing place of sustainable development where, progress is going to happen whether you want it or not. The economy will continue to grow, building needs to happen. It just needs to happen in a way that is not going to consume itself and not going to destroy what we have here.
I totally agree. And I think that one word that comes up for me a lot when you're saying that is harmony. How can we live in harmony with the earth?
Right.
So that our actions, because I think people really want to create. They need, I think for me, and just looking all around me, everybody needs to create something.
Sure.
And so but how does that creation come forward? Is it in harmony with the earth, basically?
So what have you created?
And so I wanted to bring up a couple books.
Okay.
One was The Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore, because I think that was a demarcation point. And I've listed a couple other books on the PowerPoint.
So there's good reference material if people want to learn about the background of sustainable development.
Where they can go. And this was really bringing to the public's attention about global warming.
Great, yeah.
And I think this is important to think about Maui and how global warming is going to affect Maui. Because we're already starting to see it.
Shoreline erosion, water level rise. I mean, we've got lots of issues.
The hurricane warnings.
Yep.
That was scary.
Yeah.
And
we'll continue to, the chances are hurricanes are going to get stronger and more frequent.
Yeah, and the sea's possibly going to rise.
Sure.
That's a big deal.
Sure it is.
There's a lot of other ramifications that we can talk about
There are island
later.
nations in the Pacific and Indonesia that the water level is rising. The island, the folks are having to evacuate.
One thing I wanted to mention about this was that lots of times when we're talking about global warming and certain environmental concerns, there tends to be this doom and gloom mentality. And I think part of the reason why we haven't come more forward in our ability to handle these issues is because there's a certain turnoff point where people don't want to talk about doom and gloom anymore.
Sure.
They just want, to feed their kids, go to the grocery store, watch TV, whatever. And if there is anything I could say about this movement, I would say we need to not put so much emphasis on the problems. There needs to be a little more emphasis on the solutions. So one of the solutions that happened on the Hudson River was there were two activists that got involved for the Hudson River, and they saw how it was being polluted so poorly and wanting to make it better, and they did a lot of lawsuits. And I'm just using this as an example. I know Maui's had a lot of lawsuits also about the water. And I think that there was a certain chapter in the environmental movement which needed to have litigation to make people listen to what's happening for the environment. And I really commend people for stepping forward and taking action with that. But here's my point, one of my points. Does environmental litigation take us where we want to go in regards to watershed management? Because we can spend years and years in litigation and the watershed is being continues to be devastated.
Right.
So maybe we should be using those resources to protect the environment a little bit more and come up with more co-collaboration scenarios and take a little step back and seeing, because litigation is just so expensive.
Right.
So expensive.
And it puts everybody on the defensive.
Everybody's on the defensive, and we're all neighbors. We have to work together. So, especially around water, nobody can live without water.
Right.
So there are 3 pillars to sustainable development. There's the environment, the economic, and the social or cultural. And so it's supposed to be this kind of like a pyramid of these 3 interests, and they're supposed to be balanced. Lots of times the economic comes in and just wipes out the environmental. And the social or cultural aspect is really often just disregarded. It's just for indigenous rights, nobody really cares unless there's a litigation.
Well, and that's the catalyst of the litigation is to protect those indigenous rights and to bring awareness to the whole process, because our water decisions. Certainly, Maui doesn't make any of our local water decisions. All of those decision-making power rests in Oahu. So they don't even have any sensitivity to what the actual usage issues are of the indigenous people or of the communities, the larger community. They're all looking at it from an Oahu-centric position. And we have very little say over what actually goes on over our water. So that's why there are lawsuits. That's why they've been there. If we can, get legislative change to change the structure of the decision making, then those lawsuits can stop, and we can get to the collaboration that you're talking about.
Exactly, and that's like a really great solution from just taking from what you just said, that we need to have a more an office here with more authority to handle the water issues, because there's a lot of them.
Yep.
There are a lot of them. Okay, so just going to get ideas from what's happening other places. So with the United Nations, they had certain millennium goals, and then every 15 years they're supposed to update them. What has happened with the millennium goal for sustainable development, they would have percentages. They would say, okay, we want to provide safe drinking water for a certain percentage.
Targets.
Certain targets, and we're gonna do this for this because there's so much need.
Right.
And then I'm sure there was many conversations, obviously, and it came up, nobody should be left behind. Why are we saying there should be only certain percentages? So now for the year 2030, no one is left behind with water issues around the world. And this is quite a big undertaking. And I really do believe Maui needs to take that mentality also. We can't just segment and do partial water issues. There needs to be a plan for the whole on Maui. And so these are the 17 on the screen. These are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Number 6 is clean water and sanitation. Within all these goals, there is a strong foundation that water pertains to each one of these goals. And it's been talked about a lot, how pivotal water is for our benefit, for society.
All aspects of society.
All aspects of society need to have clean water and adequate sanitation. We're at a point. And so I just want to emphasize, no one gets left behind. Briefly, I wanted to go through the different targets because I think it's important for sustainable development. When we're talking about sustainable development for water, a lot of work has gone into academically and through policies, through government, and they came up with these for the United Nations. And that's why I'm going to go through each one of them, and it seems a little tedious, but we forget. We just gloss over, and then we expect that there's going to be safe drinking water. We expect that, our sewer isn't going to commingle with our safe drinking water. We should not be assuming that because there's a lot of problems with the water going on. So the first target for SDG 6 is 6.1, safe and affordable drinking water. That's, politicians don't like to fund the infrastructure needed for drinking water and for sanitation.
Why?
It's not sexy. It's not something that you can really sell to your constituents. If you build a new baseball field, you build a new community center, something like that, that's more fun. And you're like, well, why are you just wasting taxpayer money on infrastructure instead of,
other forms of gratification.
Other forms that gratification that actually, is going to put money in my pocket type of thing. The next one is open defecation and provide access, sanitation, and hygiene. This pertains probably more to developing countries, but I have been surprised.
Have you seen some of the bathrooms at the county parks here?
No, they're bad.
That's third world countries right there going on.
I mentioned upcountry before. I can't believe that.
And we have a growing
We're just putting
homeless,
wastewater into lava tubes.
We have a growing houseless population here that don't have sanitary. They don't have access to sanitary.
So we should. That's kind of a no-brainer. Obviously, we live not in a developing country. We should be having certain
minimum standards everywhere.
Minimum standards of living.
Right.
The target 6.3 is improve water quality, wastewater treatment, and safe reuse. There's a lot in this. There's always a lot that can happen in each one of these categories. So improve water quality. Our water quality really needs to be improved on Maui. It's not doing so good. Our wastewater treatment is pretty bad. And the safe reuse, this is a really interesting thing because the only place that I have found around the world which adequately treats its water and its wastewater is Switzerland.
Oh.
That's the only place. Even Scandinavian countries, European countries, United States, we're not treating for pharmaceuticals.
No.
We're not treating for pharmaceuticals.
Or hormones.
Or hormones. And they're ending up in the water, in the fish, in what we eat.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a problem.
Sure. Everyone processes out when you take a pharmaceutical or a hormone, and even just naturally hormones, it comes out in the urine.
It does.
And that just goes right into the aquifer. It just spreads out.
And if it's like 100 or 200 people, not such a big deal. But we're talking about thousands of people, and then we have different pharmaceuticals, and they're going to cross. There's a cross chemical reactions are going to be going on.
And molecularly, those are really small elements. When you're dealing with hormones, you can't just necessarily run that stuff through a filter, a charcoal filter, because it's not necessarily going to filter out that stuff. They're too small.
No, and really when groundwater becomes contaminated, I'm not sure if we can ever really uncontaminate it. It stays in there for generations.
Well, and we have wells, there are water supplies here in Maui County that have there's no way that anybody's ever going to be able to drink that water by virtue of the heavy pesticides that they used in the early days of pineapple and sugarcane. Some of those wells are absolutely, they will never be able to draw water from them.
So we have to have some foresight to deal with these, because we're smart enough now that we have the technology, and we should be dealing with them.
Good.
Okay, 6.4, increase water use efficiency and ensure fresh water supplies. This does go with watershed management.
Sure.
A lot more financial resources should be going into watershed management. It's always an afterthought. It's always like, oh, that's just not so important. We need to focus on other things. It needs to be at the forefront of sustainable development.
So much of our water is lost through leakage out through the aqueduct system that we have. It's old. It was built in primitive form, and it leaks.
Yeah, that's a big problem right there. That's a big problem. But also just getting back to the basics, that where we get our water from in the watershed management, it's taken eons of times for these watersheds to develop and Mother Nature to do her job and provide us with water. If we go and decimate it, it's not going to show up.
And the ecosystem around the waterways. I mean, we have seen, stream flow that has been restored in various different places in Maui County has taken, on average, I'm told, about 5 years for that persistent stream flow to percolate through the entire aquifer of that stream bed, so that it over 5 years' time before it actually got saturated, and the natural balance that used to be when that water flow was unfettered, that natural balance has been reestablished. And even to the point of fish and shrimp and other wildlife have come back. In the brackish areas, that they used to populate, they're back. Those species that, the experts said, they'll never come back. Well, they have come back.
I think they can. And it's wonderful to hear that there's situations where they have. Yeah. And
it gives life to the whole process.
And to
because
us.
we can restore. There's so much damage that has been done here, but it's worth it to bring back and do the restoration, because it can and does work. And it is for the benefit of our society.
And it is, and it's a win-win-win situation, because lots of tourists come here for the beauty of Maui, and they don't want to come and look at a concrete waterfall.
And they don't want to go to the beach and get MRSA. They don't want to get a staph infection.
No, that's horrible.
I mean, it's absurd to me. I don't understand. We've had a persistent situation here in Maui County for several years. Mr. Mike White was, a council member, and also the general manager of a hotel, and an active participant in the hotel industry, an advocate for the hotel industry. And how is it that, Mr. White, that you did all of that? And what service do you think that you were actually providing to your industry in allowing Maui's water quality along the ocean to be reduced as far as it has been reduced? At what point does that exploitation begin to undermine the viability of our tourist industry? How were you serving your industry by allowing that pollution to get as out of control as you allowed it to get? So, goodbye, Mr. White. Thank you for your service, and hopefully we can move on and even find another representative for the hotel industry who does understand that there are limitations to the exploitation of the natural resources of this island. Pardon my rant.
It's okay.
But I digress.
There's more to our show in just a moment. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.
Welcome back. I'm here with Bridget Buynak, who is a water attorney. What a fabulous thing to have here in Maui County. What a fabulous resource to be able to help educate us and help craft solutions to our very complicated water issues. Let's continue.
Great. So we're looking at Sustainable Development Goals that United Nations have put together. Target 6.4, increase water use efficiency and ensure fresh water supplies. We could talk about that for days. There's just a lot there. Target 6.5, implement integrated water resource management. I don't know many people that have an integrated water resource management where we're dealing with different water issues in state agencies, dealing with groundwater, surface water, dealing with the whole picture of water. It's usually a knee-jerk reaction when we're dealing with water issues, and there really needs to be a sustainable plan for water on Maui and around the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, 6.6, protect and restore water-related ecosystems. This is usually an afterthought, but really it probably should be the first thing that we do. Restoring stream flow to historic streams is one of those things. It's for our benefit. Yeah. Target 6A, expand water and sanitation support in developing countries. And then 6B, support local engagement in water and sanitation management. I think there needs to be more public participation in water decisions. There's not enough good governance, which I look at as public participation, accountability, and transparency. Mm-hmm. Those are the three things when I think of good governance, I automatically go to in my head. Sure. So using SDG 6 as a guidepost for sustainable development on Maui, is it possible? Are we on Maui so stuck in our ways that we can't be open to what other folks are doing? There needs to be an integration of surface water, groundwater, and wastewater management. And that's good water management. And it really is a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. And even to have to talk about that and say, hey, we need to do that. Really, public officials, that's their job to make sure that that is happening. Right. And if they're not doing that, I do think there needs to be an accountability to understand, is it funding? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it just, they're putting out another fire and don't have the resources to deal with the water issues? But at a certain point, you have to say, we need to deal with these water issues now. And we need to come up with new ways of dealing with them together in collaboration. I would say what we're doing is not working so well. Right. And because I moved back after about 10 years, and I will say that there's a degradation in the environment from when I was living here 10 years ago, and then I went and did other things, and then when I came back, I'm like, I could see it, and I could feel it. You especially see it around the shoreline. Yeah, and I was like, and it's just like, aren't there supposed to be wildflowers around on Maui? Aren't there supposed to be, running waterfalls? Maui's known for these things. Maui's supposed to be a paradise. It can be, and we're in a transition period now with the termination of sugar production and this transition that everyone is trying to figure out how to do. We have an opportunity to reconstruct our society, but it really takes the citizens to step up, because the folks who have control, they don't want to give up control. They're not going to easily give up the water, and by demonstrated, they haven't. They've fought it every step of the way. And the legislator, the state authorities really have not done the job for the people. Mm-hmm. They've done the job for the corporations. They're protecting the corporations. We have a fairly corrupt system here in Hawaii, and it's not until people stand up and demand accountability that anything's going to change. And I look at it a lot about what we focus on, we create. Mm-hmm. So if we're focusing on creating money for corporations, that could be part of the equation, but not at the detriment of the environment. Right. We just have to live. And the rights of indigenous people. Yes, I agree with that. That's an issue. So how did Maui get to this point? So when Maui became a state and in that whole process, the way that the lands were divided has influenced us greatly today. And how you were at the beginning talking about we're on a sugar plantation island. The way that the roads were set up, the way that the infrastructure was all set up for water, electricity, everything was to support the sugarcane plantations and pineapple. And they were doing their job. They were doing their job. And they built this extraordinary ditch system, which is amazing. But that going to global warming, what's going to happen, and climate change, what's going to happen to that ditch system when there's like huge rains and it's going to get wiped out? Who's going to redig that ditch system?
And it's leaking.
And it's leaking already, but when we have really big storms, it's going to get wiped out. And that goes to watershed management. How are we going to manage that water resource? So the way that everything was mapped, and this is one of the books that explains the mapping and how Maui's lands were divided.
This was done historically here in the 1860s.
Right, and similar things happened, like in New Mexico where I worked before, there was a treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo, and how that treaty impacted those lands. This is similar, how the surveys were taken, how the maps were divided, greatly influence how we deal in policies with water and other things on Maui today. And this needs to be reevaluated. This worked back in the 1860s
for the plantations.
Yeah, and they were probably doing the best job they could, but we know more now.
Right.
We know a lot more now, and this doesn't seem to be working so good. There's a lot of people who are upset.
Our current system is still based on this 1860 model.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
And going towards another step for Hawaii was a sustainable development plan, and it's a good one. It's a really good plan, and I think that there's just not enough funding to go towards how are we going to do this sustainable development. I know the current governor has a couple points on this, percentages, but I'm going to go with the United Nations and say no one gets left behind. I don't think that there should be percentages. I think that every watershed, every ecosystem needs to be protected, and it's for the benefit of people when you come down to it. You have to have topsoil. You have to have good quality of water, good quality of soil, of air, just so that we can live. These are basic needs that happen. So I think there could be more focusing on the sustainable plan. A lot of people gave input to this.
A lot of energy went into it.
A lot of energy. Let's not forget that Hawaii has a sustainability plan. This is good.
But it's not really being followed.
I don't think so.
Right.
As far as I know.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe you know more than I do.
Typically we have plans here and they're just ignored.
I just know maybe they're not being funded.
There's no accountability. There's nobody that gives it the teeth that it has.
So brings up implementation is the biggest obstacle to sustainable development.
Yeah, making it happen.
It's really hard to make it happen. It sounds good. Everybody goes, yeah, sign me up.
Right.
And then...
Well, that's where citizens come in. That's where voting comes in. Because that implementation is only going to happen if the community supports it and it brings people into office who support these concepts. And we have a shot, in our county council now with, at least 5 members of the county council who have expressed opinions of an understanding that we do need to change our existing system and update, how we're doing stuff. So there is a cultural shift that can happen here in Maui County. And with testifying and testimony that you can give, in front of the Maui County Council, you can support that process.
Sounds really good.
Continue, please. We've got about 14 minutes.
Okay, so resiliency is a concept that is really good to be on the forefront of everybody's mind. Resiliency, when these climate changes happen, when there's global warming, how as we as a society are going to deal in a resilient way to make sure, honestly, that we survive. Are there going to be enough shelters? I don't think there's enough shelters right now.
No,
Very.
There's a deficit. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're at risk. The entire community is at risk. Of
You
all
know,
kinds of
food security,
virtually none. We have
water
a
security.
3-day food supply.
Yeah, that's a problem. So, you know, evacuation centers, hurricanes, the rise of the water on the land. My understanding is that there's going to be a lot of problems.
There's displacement there, and there's talk going on now about, moving certain structures away from the shoreline and having to actually accommodate a rising sea level. There's infrastructure issues that are going to have to be addressed because the sea level is indeed rising.
I think it's something we're going to have to look at. So the next slide has to do with where are the financial resources of Maui being placed when it comes to watershed resource management.
Good question.
So I think a lot of litigation happens, and I think environmental folks get so frustrated that they're not being heard that their only recourse is litigation.
Yeah, well, often that's the case.
It's like, how many meetings can we have?
Right.
How many negotiations? I thought I could trust you, and then you didn't follow through.
Right.
Things like that. People need to follow through on what they say, and that's the accountability aspect.
It is accountability, and that's true for Maui County. It's been true for Maui County as an organization. Because their attitude is, the director's attitude under Mayor Arakawa is like, you don't like what we're doing, sue us.
You see, and that's a problem.
So just sue us.
And I think we need to get to a different place where we realize we're all neighbors. And we live with each other.
Right.
This is a small island, and
that's hopefully the difference.
Start.
That's hopefully the difference that Mike Victorino is going to bring to Maui County. That to change the mantra, that the mantra for Maui County administration should not be so sue us. In his statement yesterday in declaring who he's requesting his directors to be, he basically said that he wants to have the directors and the departments have a public service attitude, that they are indeed there to service the public, not just the business interests, but the public's needs.
That's wonderful.
And could be a meaningful mantra change. Here in Maui County, because the way that it's been, the departments are geared towards facilitating just the business interests, and they don't pay attention to the public's interests or the environment's. And that's certainly evidenced by the injection wells.
And I'm going to say the business interests, if they really were looking at the big picture, are environmental interests. They're making money off of the environment here on Maui.
And it needs to be protected.
It does.
The the leisure industry needs to understand that.
Yes.
Please continue.
It's worth noting that the past 100 years are going to look really different from the next 100 years. Mm-hmm. And we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but we know it's going to be different.
Right.
With climate change, with storms, with the population growth. There's a huge amount of population. There's a lot of migration going on, and we need to be a little more accepting. I'm even going to go beyond tolerant. I think there needs to be a welcoming, accepting of different, diverse groups of people. We all came from somewhere else.
The melting pot will continue.
The melting pot will continue. Food security is a huge, huge issue on Maui. Somebody told me that they're going to start growing coffee on the sugarcane fields the other day. I don't know if that's true or not.
I've heard coffee is coming in, yeah.
I drink coffee. I eat sugar.
My understanding is it's not going to be organic coffee.
I heard it was going to be GMO. But not from a credible source at all.
There is no GMO coffee.
There's no GMO coffee?
No.
Somebody told me there was.
No,
I don't know.
It doesn't exist.
Okay, good. Good to know.
Yeah.
And, but.
That's like broccoli. There is no GMO broccoli. It doesn't exist. We had people that came, and it's important for the community to understand that, because we had people that emotionally came and testified. I use it as an example. They emotionally came and testified before the county council about, GMOs are a problem, or the problem, and I know that it's a problem because I got sick from eating GMO broccoli.
Oh, interesting.
And it's like, well, dude, GMO broccoli does not exist
Maybe it was the pesticides on the broccoli.
Well, you know, the completely different issues, you know, they're intertwined.
They're intertwined. It's how we grow our food.
Exactly, and many of the GM, genetically modified practices, are modified to accept the application of herbicides, the Roundup.
Yeah, I don't like Roundup so much.
It's getting everywhere.
I'm all for like organic gardening. It makes sense.
Right.
Okay. There's an island out there, Mauritius. I always have a hard time saying this name. It's not part of the United States, but when I was doing research, I think looking at the island of Mauritius is a really good idea because they had a lot of sugar cane. And now they're going to resorts and they're dealing with a lot of the same issues that are happening on Maui.
Sure.
And we could learn from each other. I think that they could learn from us and we could learn from them.
Sweet.
And so I would just put that out there into the universe, that looking at the island of Mauritius. Okay, so here's one of the solutions where I'm looking at the clock.
Yeah.
A legislative creation of Ahupua'a districts. And sorry if I mutilate the Hawaiian word.
We mutilate the Hawaiian language all the time.
Very
Deep
apologize.
respect and apologies.
Yeah, because my heart's in the right place.
Yep.
I want to help things. Other jurisdictions from my studies and looking at this do have a similar legal structure of water management within conservation districts. You could create a water master with a scientific backing, and it could be through the University of Hawaii. And this would really give support to the management of the watersheds of Maui and in other islands too, of course. Its time is now. It's really needed. We need to have a transparency. We need to have somebody on the ground looking at what's happening on watersheds, because we just go and take snapshots. Oh, one day X is happening, another day Y is happening. You don't really know what's happening on the watersheds on a daily basis. Somebody needs to be there monitoring it, taking measurements, for water quality and water quantity.
Well, some of that is going on through the Moku system. I mean, the Hawaiian system of the pie wedges that go from mountain to ocean. There are the established. Recently, the signs have been going up here in Maui County, where you talked about having signs up. Well, they are labeling the boundaries of where the different Mokus transition into one another.
And are they paid? Are they being paid?
No.
So my idea is that they would be paid.
Yeah, sure.
And they would.
And that is part of the.
That would be supporting the native Hawaiian culture.
That is part of the hope that the Moku system can be, brought further into the structure of our government, so that they can that expertise, because that is that long, generational knowledge that has been passed down from, through families and through, individuals that had responsibilities for land management in their district, in their Moku. They have the knowledge, and that knowledge is tremendously valuable to us, through all of this.
I'm in total agreement with what you're saying, and I think they need financial support.
Yeah.
And I think the County of Maui or the state of Hawaii can give that support for those folks who have devoted their lives to doing the service to Hawaii. And I do think that they could be supported by scientific advisors. I think that would give them a little bit more credibility in a good way. And those scientific advisors could be trained through the University of Hawaii.
Well, and they do. I've seen presentations, public events, where the community has gone upstream with an expert from U of H.
That's wonderful.
Who is able to help and educate the entire community about what they're dealing with in their particular situation.
And maybe I'm wanting to take that a step further and saying this really needs to be on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
And let's get legislative support for that. Rather than going over litigation over and over and over, let's use that money to pay people to do what they want to do. That would be wonderful. There's this book that just came out in my research in the library, Thinking Like an Island, Navigating a Sustainable Future in Hawaii. Chapter 5 talks about the ecological design for island water systems. It's really on point to what we're talking about today. Lauren C. Ruth Vanu wrote this chapter in this book. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. There's a lot of information in there.
Great.
And it's all about sustainable development for Hawaii. Wonderful, wonderful. They talk about natural system technologies and how when we develop our technologies, we should be mimicking what's happening. Yes.
That's always the way.
Exactly. I think so too.
Sure, in all things.
I think we're being like stupid if we don't do that. Another idea for sustainable development on Maui is that we have so many beautiful plants here that are native to here and endemic. And we really should be having greenhouse, a way to protect them, promulgate the seeds, and really take that seriously. Not expect, private individuals to somehow carry that burden. Of course they can do that, but really isn't it that a public official to make sure that we carry on the seeds and carry on the diversity of the island? There's been there's a similar botanic gardens that's in London that I think is a really good reference point. It wouldn't be the same, but their efforts there are something I think that Maui could really learn from.
Sweet.
And that's going towards sustainable development. It's helping the culture with the Hawaiians. It's helping people could go pay to go to this botanical gardens. That would be amazing, like a huge, huge greenhouse. It benefits everybody. Recently, I went too many. On December 3rd, 2018, the World Bank announced $600 billion over 5 years for climate change action.
Wow.
Let's say that again.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
This is a lot of money. The World Bank Group announced $600 billion over 5 years for climate change action. The World Bank Group's taking climate change pretty seriously.
Yeah, there's some of those funds available to a place like Maui?
It's worth looking into.
Yeah.
And the quote that I put on here by the president, Jim Yong Kim, "We are pushing ourselves to do more and to go faster on climate, and we call on the global community to do the same. It's about putting countries and communities in charge of building a safer, more climate resilient future." And that goes back.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. And I just this is my last slide.
Okay.
There's a couple observations that I've noticed. When we deal with water, so many times we start from a place of conflict. And I really believe we need to start from a place of celebration. We need to celebrate and give gratitude for the Earth's waters. And how are we going to do that socially and culturally? We need to remember that water is a special resource. And economically, we want to treat it as any other economic resource, and it just is not.
Right.
Water scarcity is usually a water management issue. Look to that first before blaming the climate change or global warming. Usually, funding just wasn't given when it should have been. There are actually huge water reserves in the ocean. So underneath the ocean waters, there's huge aquifers of water.
Right. There's fresh water that leaks out.
There's
all
fresh
over.
water.
That's absolutely. And we have, around Maui, there are a number of different micro areas where that fresh water percolates out into the ocean below the ocean surface. So there's a bloom of fresh water that spreads out into the ocean.
And that's Mother Nature doing her thing.
It is, absolutely. That's a structural thing. And those are unique areas that need to be identified and protected, absolutely.
In my studies, I've noticed that the Middle East tends to be a paradigm that around the world we're following, which is scary when you start to look at it, because we're just and so much conflict over water.
Right.
I really like the Hammurabi Code. It's it's one of the first written laws that we know of that's found in the Mesopotamian area, the Middle East. And it's this huge black basalt, and it has these certain language on it. Mm-hmm. And there's a section on there for a water code.
Oh.
And so they realized thousands of years ago that civilizations rise and fall if you don't deal with your water issues. That's water quality and water quantity. If you don't have those, your civilization goes away.
Right. Well, we are all about perpetuating our civilization here and supporting it to evolve into a place that serves the people's best interest and the environment's best interests, not just the business interests that seem to have control of it. This has been a wonderful, overview, and I know that your experience in the details of it is rich and deep. If there are folks that are active in water issues and they would like to reach you and bring you as a resource into what they're doing, how can people reach you?
Oh, okay. I'm at bridget.buynak@gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you are, experienced and willing to participate in the evolution, like supporting the plan, the water plan that is
Absolutely
in existence, but not really being followed.
It's really not being implemented as it could be.
Right.
And I'm really into building win-win situations where everybody is benefiting from the co-collaboration.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming and putting together a presentation like this.
Thank you very much.
It's inspirational and very well appreciated. We try and bring solutions. It's not all just about complaining. Again, we could complain all day long. But there are solutions that are at hand for some of these major issues here in Maui County. And our thanks to Bridget Buynak for bringing some of those solutions here today. Check us out at mauicauses.org and join us again here next week on Akaku. Aloha.
Aloha.
This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.